On January 23, 1990, 37 people were arrested in the rotunda of the U.S. Congress for protesting against U.S. aid to El Salvador. 6 Jesuit priests and 2 women had been brutally murdered just over 2 months earlier, on November 16, 1989, by Salvadoran soldiers who had been trained and equipped by the U.S. government. In addition, tens of thousands of Salvadorans had been tortured and killed by the Salvadoran military since the assassination of Archbishop Oscar Romero on March 24, 1980. He had pleaded to no avail with President Jimmy Carter to cut off military aid to the Salvadoran government. The protest began with a procession to the steps of the U.S. Congress.
Seems to me it's time that the United States stop intervening in Central America. As an American, I guess what's most important to me is that people can determine for themselves what kind of a government they want. I don't think the United States should be supporting to $1.5 million a day what is supposedly a democratic government in El Salvador.
They've been telling.
We're trying to lie.
Yeah, you should stop the lying.
Well, specifically that we're not responsible for all the people who are being killed, and we are because it's our tax money. Training military people and buying weapons. I think we got in this situation because we deem it necessary to control any country that's smaller than our country.
On the steps of the U.S. Capitol, an interfaith prayer vigil and rally was held. Hundreds of church representatives from various parts of the U.S. participated. At the end of the prayer vigil, 37 people entered the Capitol building. Under the huge dome, 8 persons lay down on the floor and were covered with sheets bearing the names of various categories of victims of U.S.-sponsored repression by the Salvadoran security forces, such as peasants, indigenous people, health workers, children, religious workers, and others.
In the name of God, stop the repression!
Actor Martin Sheen proclaimed the group's statement and led the Our Father, while others knelt in reverence for the victims and in prayer for an end to the U.S. military aid to El Salvador.
Some of us lie on the floor of the rotunda to represent the 70,000 Salvadorans and thousands of other Central Americans who have been killed in the last decade by forces armed and trained by the United States government. After 11 years and $4 billion in aid, we witness a dramatic escalation of the persecution of churches, unions, civic organizations, and other groups working on behalf of the poor in El Salvador. The brutal murder of the 6 Jesuits and the 2 women at the university in November is a dramatic symbol of the generalized repression being suffered by the Salvadoran people. We call upon Congress and the Bush administration to end the persecution of the churches and civilian communities of El Salvador by ending aid to the government of that country and by supporting genuine negotiations for peace involving the Salvadoran government, the Faribundo Martí Front for National Liberation, FMLN, and the many civilian organizations which are ready to participate in a democratic process of change.
Did you see what happened?
There were people providing the support of funds to El Salvador.
The 37 persons involved were arrested and charged with unlawful entry and demonstrating in the Capitol building and were dragged off. Some of those who had spent the night in jail were sentenced to time served. Others were sentenced to 1 day of community service, while others had to choose between 2 days in jail or a $50 fine. Martin Sheen, Philip Berrigan, and some others were jailed when they refused to pay the fine. Sheen told the judge, "My only regret is that I did not take the action sooner to stop the criminal and immoral aid from our country to the Salvadoran government." Berrigan asked the judge to investigate U.S. foreign policy, adding, "If you do so, perhaps you will join us in taking action to change it." Father Joseph Mulligan explained that he took the action in order to represent the 6 Jesuits and 2 women killed by the Salvadoran army in November 1989, as well as the thousands of other victims of U.S.-sponsored repression.
All of us can do something.